Hi, my name is Dan Zeilinger, and I have been a world-traveling full-time trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of my most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials across the world. I've met many people during my career and have spent many hours on stage and off with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on the weekends with friends. I think they all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, I'll be sharing them with you. Hi, Mike, are you there? Make sure that your microphone icon is clicked in your lower left-hand corner.
Lower left-hand.
Oh, there it is. I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah, I want you to know that I just kicked off Hal Smith because he got his times messed up.
Sorry.
And what's funny is he's in Arkansas as well.
He is. Where at?
Well, I'm not sure actually, and I'm not going to get him back on to ask. But
Oh, okay. Well, originally, I thought the notice was from like 12:30 to 2 or something like that. And then when the meeting notice popped up, it was 2 to 3:30. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. My son's doing the scheduling, and so what can I say? Yeah, we were both. Let's see. Hal is in Scarsey.
Cersei. Wow, that's the east part of the state.
He's okay. Well, then he doesn't count.
He's really over there in Hicksville. No.
You know, it's. By the way, I'm going to talk to you for a little bit just about what this is about, and I'll do an intro, and then we'll actually launch into the recording part of it. But we'll edit out everything before that.
Oh, okay, cool.
You're looking fit and chipper.
Yeah, I had a bariatric procedure about 2 years ago, and I dropped like 125 pounds.
Maybe I should look into that for me.
Well, it was actually covered. It was covered by health care because of acid reflux, not weight loss.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I'm not only acid reflux, but I've got apnea as well. So.
Me too. And I had high blood pressure and diabetes, and I don't have any of that anymore.
Excellent. Just to let you know, this is just conversations with people I've met over my career. I'm not looking to make any in-depth study of Dixieland or trad jazz and its effect on society. It's just kind of a cool hang, and I try to avoid talking about COVID or politics, or this is kind of a historical document of just people that are playing trad currently. And kind of a musician's lounge hang is the idea, you know?
Yeah.
And like most tuba players, we haven't worked together, but we've traded a lot of work and passed each other in hallways quite often. And Pat Deneen has told me many stories about you.
Oh my gosh.
So you can tell some back once we get started here.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I went through your questionnaire, and I got to that section of who have I played with, and after 3 pages I said, oh heck with that.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's funny, there's actually not a whole lot about you online other than your relationship with the Suntos, of course.
Yeah, no, I've pretty much played under the radar. I've been all over the place.
Oh, here, let me go ahead and give the intro, and we can get started on the meat of the discussion here.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay. Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger for Trad Jazz Today, and my next guest is excellent tubist. Is that right? Or tuba player? Anyway, we both play the same instrument. How's that sound? And of course, he has a family lineage that we'll get into, and we've traded quite a bit of work back and forth and followed each other into different gigs and things. But here he is, Mr. Mike Marois. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yep. Marois rhymes with Rolls Royce.
Wow. Now, see, if you can figure out what rhymes with Zeilinger that way, I'd be appreciative.
I'll work on that.
So yeah, so what did you think of that questionnaire? Was that pretty easy?
Yeah, yeah. What did I score on it?
Oh,
No.
I don't know. I haven't run it through the YouTube channel. I'm kidding. So were you actually born in Las Vegas?
I was born in Vegas. Yes,
Nobody gets born in Las Vegas.
October 4th, 1962, at Sunrise Hospital, two
My
blocks
word.
off.
That's
Yeah,
that's
well,
that's interesting. And
yeah,
that's in the city of Vegas.
Yeah, the Dukes of Dixieland, who were my Uncle Frank and Uncle Freddie, and Papa
Right.
Jack Asanto was my grandfather. They were based out of Las Vegas back in the early 60s. And my mother, Frances Jean, was affiliated with the band doing office work and that kind of stuff. So,
So the first time you heard Dixieland was probably in the womb.
yeah, yep, in the womb. And I heard a lot of Dixieland.
I would imagine. It's almost surprising that you ended up going into that style of music. I know that as kids, quite often we'll reject whatever our parents are doing.
Well, had the family lineage, and Santo is very Italian, and so there's
Yes.
a lot of traditions steeped in Italian side of the house. So they would actually take me to Duke's gigs on the Strip in a car seat and put me at the foot of the stage. And I did not cry because
Yeah,
so
I have a great picture of my son sitting on stage with me, along with a couple other people, but he was playing a play school trumpet. So he's been through the same thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, it's funny how now my kids, they could care less about Dixieland jazz, really. I tried. My son is bass player, and he's been playing more rock and roll and that kind of stuff. But who knows, when he turns 30 or 40, he might get into Dixieland.
Absolutely. You can never tell. And I was just discussing with, if you saw any of my have you seen any of my previous interviews?
Yes.
Because Tomas from Hungary was talking about how they found out that as you get older, your musical taste change.
Uh-huh. That's true. That's true. You can't go out and play Def Leppard or Twisted Sister 5 nights a week, but you could probably do the Dukes of Dixieland stuff 5 nights a week.
Well, absolutely. There was such a large influence on the Dixieland community, part of that 50s and 60s revival that really made it happen. Let's go back all the way to the first paying gig you got. Was that with the family?
The first paying Dixieland gig I got was back when I was in high school, and ended up old trombone player, tuba player from LA. I don't know if you got the pleasure of playing with him. Bill Jackson had a band called the Outcast Eight, and my father was the trumpet player and my mother was the singer in it. And on a Wednesday, he handed me a cassette tape and his tuba and said, "Here, learn this. Your first gig Saturday night."
Oh my!
And I think it paid $30, and it was like a 3-hour gig out at Elks Lodge, But it was a lot of fun. Evidently, he wanted to go back to playing trombone, and so he took John Valley, who's another old.
I know John.
You know John? Yeah. So John was the trombone player, left-handed trombone player, I might add. And so they did a swap, and I got playing, and then from there on, I did a couple of festivals with them, and then my father started his own band called the New Bull Moose Party Band.
Right.
And we were heavily influenced with the Dukes of Dixieland material. We were doing a lot of their charts, basically, as a tribute band to them. And did several festivals with them, and that actually led they had Papa Jack as the emperor and Mama Joe as the empress for the Sacco Jubilee back in the 80s. And we were like their pit band.
So you didn't start on tuba?
I did not start on tuba. I started at the ripe old age of 8 on accordion. There again, being the Italian influence in my family.
You can play tarantella with anybody.
You got it. You got it. So I picked up the accordion, and then when I got up to high school, lo and behold, they didn't have marching accordions in the marching band. So I switched over to trumpet because I already read treble, so that wasn't too tricky. And then about junior year, that's when I switched over to tuba, you know, and that's.
Yeah, I started on trumpet as well.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I always feel having a background in a keyboard instrument helps, especially if you're reading both bass and treble clef at the same time.
And it just helps visualize theory so much easier.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And but the one thing I didn't count on was when I switched to tuba, I was reading just straight bass clef and not putting the extra step in because I was playing a B flat horn. So, you know, I had to pretty much relearn how to read bass clef when I was playing B flat horns. That's why after high school, I switched over to C horns.
Okay. Yeah, I've never done C. So what does that tell you? That I'm odd, I guess. I'm not sure. You know, just a quick aside, and you'll understand. I did some time playing with a British brass band type instrumentation where everything's in treble.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, because I started as a trumpet player, there are B flat parts read just like trumpet parts. So I'm burning through this stuff, and all these legit guys playing double C's trying to transpose the B flat treble clef part are going crazy. They kept saying, "How are you reading that stuff so fast?" Anyway.
Yeah, no, I had an experience up here about 2-3 years ago where a brass band actually asked me to play, and I showed up with a C, thinking it was going to be, you know, bass clef in C, and nope, it's treble B flat parts. I'm like, holy crap, what am I going to do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, even the E flat parts read like bass clef, which is the key signature. But the guys who walk in with a double C horn, they're kind of up a creek, you know?
Oh, yeah. I was actually thinking about writing a transposition program so I could feed in my B flat and rescore it into C, but I chose to leave that orchestra.
Yeah, just quickly along the same lines, the first time I did the Chilliwack Vancouver Festival in British Columbia, I didn't fly my horn up. It was early on in my career, and I wasn't flying my horn around. I asked them if they could supply me with a horn, and I got on stage, and right before the downbeat, they handed me an E flat Besson.
Oh, no.
It took me a set before I figured out I could just press down the fourth valve and put myself back in B flat again. But
I was just gonna say, hold that fourth valve down, and you're in B flat.
I didn't know that for a set.
I toured with the Hot Frogs for a while.
So did I.
The new Hot Frogs, because I
was their last tuba player.
Oh, okay. I was probably 3 before you, because I think Ray Cadd played with them for a bit.
Dave Wright was after
Dave
you.
Wright. Yeah, Dave Wright actually came on right after me.
Yeah, and I came on right after him.
Oh, okay. But I remember we were in Helena, Montana, and I had actually dropped my horn off at the airport, and I had a dyslexic baggage handler. So my horn went to Honolulu as opposed to Helena. So for the first couple of sets, the local high school showed up and gave me a B flat horn. So it was like, uh-oh, because my horn at that time was a 2J con.
Okay.
And I ended up having to transpose back. But at that festival, it was hilarious because they were serving Lynchburg lemonades in these little, glass mugs that looked like it had a handle on it and had the recipe on the back.
Sure.
And I remember Silverman started a set, and I pulled the horn out, But me and a couple of the guys in the band had been drinking right before the set, and I had taken all of our little mugs and stuffed them down my horn, the bell of my horn. So he counted off the first tune, and I go up, and it's, it's all and muddly, and I put the horn down, and I start reaching in and pulling out these and stacking them up on the piano. And the audience just broke out laughing like you would. And Silverman was kind of mad at me.
He was a bit, yeah. Well, I'm surprised Joe didn't kill you, but.
No, I think Joe was on his downslope. He was chilling in life a little bit.
Yeah, I've got some frog stories, but there's one thing that all of us tuba players have in common, and that's flying with those horns.
Oh yeah.
I remember standing at the baggage claim at Alaska Airlines at LAX, and they actually sent my Miraphone end over end down the ramp onto onto the belt. They didn't do the oversized luggage.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, they're not really set up to handle large instruments. And actually I had a Montel Wesson that I had the Anvil Case Company build a case for, and that's the horn I ended up traveling with the Hot Frogs with.
Yeah.
And that case was the size of a coffee table.
Oh yeah, Dave Wright had an anvil made for his sousaphone. It looked like a rolling wet bar.
Yeah. And I'd even, when I had the case spec'd out, I had it so that I could put my uniforms and everything in the case to provide extra padding. And luckily, I really never had any issues with, a horn not making. Now, when they got you on those puddle jumpers, that's where it got scary because that case wouldn't fit in one of those smaller ones.
Yeah, like the plane to Helena or one of those things.
Exactly. So I don't know how the heck they get it around, truck it or something.
The first time I flew to Italy to take a cruise. I flew to Italy, and Ralph Reynolds had made me a denim soft case for my sousaphone, and so I wrapped it in comforters and blankets and pillows and zipped it up, and I took it to LAX and put it on the belt at, I think it was United, and the girl looks at me and she says, "How come you didn't bring a hard case?" I said, "This is really all I've said I've flown it all over the country without any incidents," and she goes, "You haven't been to Italy."
Oh no!
And she was right.
Oh,
it was mangled by the time I got there.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's that's one of the hassles with our instrument is getting it to a place. That's why we get a network of players around the country and say, "Hey, I'm doing something in your neighborhood. Can I borrow your horn?"
Yeah, John Brand did that to me once. That is borrow my horn. But
wait, that big old sousaphone? Or no, John was borrowing your horn.
He was borrowing my horn. No, a couple of things. One time he and Rusty and the guys were playing at Sergeant Preston's across the street from Disneyland. And I get a phone call, and it's John, and he says, "Hey, Dan, what are you doing tonight?" I said, "I was just watching TV." He goes, "Can you come over to Sergeant Preston's and bring your horn?" His valve assembly had finally just come apart in his hand.
Oh my gosh. The block of wood gave out finally.
So I brought the horn over there, and I brought a trombone, which I don't play, and I sat in on trombone all night. But anyway.
Oh wow, that's cool.
That's another story for a different bar. So let's talk about some of your career here. After when you got a little bit older, you started doing the same thing I did, which was a lot of theme parks.
Oh yeah, I did. I never really got to experience the Southern California theme parks. I ended up right off the bat going out of the country to Japan. I got a phone call from a promoter in Las Vegas that needed a quartet in Japan in a week.
Was that with Jim Turner?
Yeah. Jimmy Turner on banjo, Jeff Walker on clarinet, and Corey Jim on trumpet.
Corey.
Yeah.
I just saw him not too long ago.
Oh yeah, I've been seeing him all over YouTube and everything. He looks great and fantastic.
Still playing fantastic, and now he plays clarinet and trombone, and
Yeah, that's what freaks me out is when he picks up a trombone or a clarinet and he sounds as good as he does on trumpet. It's like,
And he plays
man.
so upstream. How does he do that on trombone? He plays so upstream. Anyway,
But yeah, so this promoter, it says, yeah, I need a quartet, and it's got to be very American looking. So that's, I got Jimmy and I got Jeff and Corey and myself. We showed up, we played a tune, and the guy goes, "Okay, go to the State Department, get your passports, you're hired." And heck, a week later, we woke up and we were in Japan.
yeah, that's like landing on another planet. I had a chance to tour Japan for 12 days.
Uh-huh.
Wow, it's quite a different culture, isn't it?
It is. Our work week was 6 days a week, basically. And we wouldn't have anybody in the park the first 4 days, but those last 2 days, just the way their culture is, they're very family oriented. So you had all the families from the island coming to the park. And some days you couldn't even walk around. It was so crowded. And then other days you could fire a cannon through the place because everybody was working. And the great thing was we were working for the Mitsui Greenland Corporation, who owns Mitsubishi Motors,
Okay.
and like Kirin Beer and all the alcohol distilleries. So we would put together shopping lists, and we actually had crates of booze and food delivered to the house. And we had 4 mama-sons watching out. It was not only the band, but it was a dance and singing troupe and a group of bikers. And it was just, they were calling it a California festival. And we were mobile, which made it so that they could say, hey, we want to promote the park in Nagasaki, or we want to go to another part of the island to get drum up business. So they would load us on this bus that would look like a cable car, San Francisco cable car, and drive us to all these foreign locations around Japan. And, it was like, well, I guess this beats playing for nobody.
Well, I have to say they go crazy for American jazz. So
Oh, they do. There were a few workers in the park that actually were players, and on our nights off, they would pick us up and take us to their houses out in the countryside.
sure.
And most of these houses did not have full bathrooms. I mean, they had the old time Japanese.
Right, bomb sites.
Yeah, you got it. So it was like, whoa. And then, we'd play music with them and teach them tunes. They tunes. It was a really great way to share the music. And, by all means, we were doing the known Dixieland standards that people, were more popular and understood. We didn't get into, Annie Chicken's,
Annie Skinner's chicken dinners or
yeah, we didn't. I didn't get to do that kind of fun stuff until I moved up to Chicago and got to play with the guys who were in the Salty Dogs. But it was fun to share the experience with the locals, being a foreigner, and for them to embrace us and us to basically be sponges and learn their music. It was a lot of fun. And Jimmy actually ended up staying a few more months afterwards, and I think he married a girl, and he's got 3 sons now.
yeah. I played with Jimmy down at the Reuben E. Lee in Newport Beach a couple times.
Oh, okay, yeah. I did that, the Sunday brunch several times.
I think I was subbing for you. Yes.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I sub for you a lot, but we just have never spent any time together. In different bands, I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's hard to get 2 tubas on the same band at the same time.
However,
when I was playing with Rosie McCard, Gary Kaiser and I would show up on Friday nights at Sterling's in Santa Monica, where Rosie was playing. And we would, because we were learning the music at that time, and we would both be playing tuba. And, he'd take a couple of courses, I'd take a couple of courses. But the fun thing with Rosie McCard was his theory on music was you had to learn every tune in every key. So he would call standards in non-standard keys.
sure.
and it was a real fun time.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to be interviewing Gary too.
Oh, you are?
I met him through his mom at Mammoth Lakes in Sacramento and stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know he's over in France and he's
Yep.
been there for 20, 30 years. I
I
mean,
know.
he just took off. But yeah, that was a kind of an eclectic group, and you never knew who was going to show up. I mean, one Saturday night I was in there and Wild Bill Davison showed up and played a couple of sets, and it was like, whoa.
A force of nature.
Yeah, and old trumpet player Richard Miller, uh, and he's like or was a film producer for PBS, and old Burr Middleton on drums, the voice of the tall guy on Police Squad. I don't know if
Oh, yeah.
you remember that show. Well, they always showed a guy, and they never showed his face. Well, that was Burr's voice.
That's funny.
But yeah, no, the music is so strange because my family, ever since the very beginning, my grandfather had to talk with me and said, if you're going to make your living in music, make sure that you have a backup. And that's what he did with his sons.
That has come across almost every interview I've done. That
Oh,
sentence.
yeah, no, and it's the truth because like we were talking, doing amusement parks and all that kind of stuff. Well, I had to leave a job at a major aerospace company to go do those 3 months in Japan. And when I got over to Japan, my secretary kept writing me and saying, keep me abreast of what was going on back at the old job. Well, come to find out, as luck would have it, the company I worked for got bought by GM. I was in middle management. They got rid of the whole middle management tier I was in like 2 weeks after. So I was like, whoa, yeah. I'm doing music in Japan,
Wow. Talking about dodging a bullet.
Yeah. But, as my career has progressed, I've always been on the fringe. I came back from Japan. I got a full-time job with a software company, and I was doing that. And then I got a call from Ralph Reynolds to go down to Orlando and be part of this Pleasure Island Philharmonic. They had opened up a new park, and it was all nightclubs. And the Philharmonic just goes around to all the different clubs and plays all the different types of music that are in the clubs. And for the most part, they're street musicians that play Dixieland jazz. And Bobby Pickett was the trumpet player on that. Jeff.
Yeah, I know Bobby.
Yeah, Jeff Walker was the clarinet player. Jimmy Turner was the banjo player, and Ralph was the washboard player. And so we did that for about a year, and then, as typical Disney does, they said your services are no longer needed.
Yeah, it was a shock when they did that to the whole Disneyland band here. But.
Oh yeah. No, they're more into looking at the bottom line. Now, my profession is I work in finance for a major food company, and we look at the bottom line too. So I can see why they make some of the decisions. But
Sure.
When you're one of the musicians, you don't see that. I mean, the funny thing with the street bands and everything at Disney or Disney World, the basic business philosophy of music is if they're stopped watching you, they're not spending money.
Right.
So you're sort of like
Yeah, I found that out I was at Knott's Berry Farm for a long time with Rusty's Tires and Brad Roth and George Andrus. And we got in trouble once for gathering a crowd.
Oh, no.
Because they weren't shopping.
They weren't shopping, or they were tying up, preventing people from coming in. If you ever notice where bands play at these locations, they're not going to be in front of a storefront because they want that egress open so that people can move in and out. And when we were at Pleasure Island, heck, we were like in the middle of the street, and and we play one tune. I played with the Banjo Kings for several weeks when Pete Vrianides injured his back, and that just happened to be right after they had laid us off at Pleasure Island. But you go out and you play 10 minutes an hour, and it's like, well, man. And they go, well, that's all they want us to play.
Yeah, we were doing 20 minutes an hour at our sets. Yeah.
But unfortunately, you gotta look at, well, if I'm at an amusement park, now maybe you and I would go to listen to a fellow musician. I mean when we were at Pleasure Island, we had people like John Allred and
Sure.
and Pat Galata and all these guys coming up just to hang with us to
Yeah,
hear
John's
us.
incredible.
Yeah. Oh, he's a monster. He actually bought one of my old Yamaha euphoniums back in the Orlando days because what I was doing was I was wearing a tuba, but I had a euphonium behind me. And so I put the tuba down and pick up the euphonium and play a chorus or something. But
Yeah, Wesley did the same thing.
Yeah. It's shtick. It sells. They go, hey, where'd you get that baby tuba from?
Right. Yeah, it's all showbiz, man. Now,
Yeah.
I teased you before we actually came online about stories Pat Deneen had told me. And all he really told me was your fondness for tater tots.
My fondness for tater. Oh, gosh. Well, Pat and I did a show in Branson.
Ragtime Lil, yeah.
Ragtime Lil and Banjo. We call it Bathroom because the banjo in Spanish is banjo. But we showed up the first rehearsal. Patrick was rough for wear because I think he drove in all the way from the West Coast.
Yeah, he did.
To Branson. And I just had to come down from Chicago, which was like a 6-hour drive. So it wasn't that bad for me. But I remember we were going through we had a meeting with our stage manager, and the stage manager was a local and spoke with Southern drawl. Yeah, local, yeah. And Mike Massessa was the drummer on the band, and I was the tuba player. Mark Allen Jones was a piano player. Chris Archer was one of the banjo players, and Patrick Deneen was a banjo player. And then Teresa was the singer. But it was hilarious. We had Jay Thomas playing bass on that, and a sax player from Ohio who was, he was a young kid and showed real potential. But we're going through and doing roll call. The stage manager goes, Mike Massessa. And Massessa in his New York voice goes, man, here. And he goes, Mike Marois. I go, here. He goes, Mike and Mike. How am I going to tell you guys apart? And both me and Massessa turned to each other and said, why don't you use our initials? Mike M and Mike M.
That's funny. No, Pat used to call me just completely drunk from that gig. And he drunk called me. Pretty funny stuff.
One morning it was hilarious because it was like a scene from MASH. Massessa and I shared a room, and we were like at this lodge, and Pat was down about 2 rooms, and they opened up onto the parking lot. Massessa moved his big old Oles around to the front of Deneen's room, and he got a bunch of bungee cords. And we wrapped him around the handle to the door so that Patrick couldn't get out of his room because we knew he went to bed drunk. So we set up some lawn chairs to watch this whole thing unfold. And sure enough, about an hour later, he's like trying to pry the door open, and he finally opens a window and crawls out the window and had some choice words for us. But that was definitely one of the better pranks that Massessa and I had done on that gig.
That's pretty funny. So what happened after Branson?
After Branson, gosh, I ended up going down to Orlando again, but the music world had changed 180 degrees from where it was when I had left originally after the Pleasure Island Philharmonic gig. And so I ended up taking a computer gig and just doing that kind of stuff. And eventually, after about a year or so, I got hired by Tropicana out on the West Coast. So we moved to Bradenton, and that's, you know, where basically we started our family. I've got a son who's 23 and a daughter who's just turned 21. So and I worked for Tropicana for a couple of years. But the interesting thing was when we would get the music gigs, and I was getting calls to play for guys like Bill Allred and all the major bookers around town. You would show up, and all of a sudden, you're having to play the Little Mermaid theme. You're having, you know, Under the Sea. You're having to do all this Disney shit now, and kind of interpret it to Dixieland instrumentation, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. You know, the days of, you know, running wild for 20 minutes were gone. So, you know, I kind of missed the music in that part of my life. But when I moved out to Bradenton, I got into a whole new influx of musicians out there, which were mainly, I would say, a bunch of New Yorker guys who had retired there. A guy named Joe Bruno, gosh, I'm just trying to remember all the guys I used to play with out there. But, and like Joe Bruno just turned 95 and he's still playing down there.
Oh my.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, if he can do it, I'm going to shoot for that record. 95 on tuba, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody who's lasted that long on that instrument. I know a few guys who have gotten up there on trumpet and stuff, but.
Well, I think Harvey ended up playing, yeah, I think he got into his late 70s.
Yeah.
And Harvey Phillips. And one of my people that I idolized, Rich Madison, he actually, back in the 50s, he played with the Dukes of Dixieland. And he showed up to that recording session with Louis with just a tuba. And Louis goes, "You're going to play that?" And he played the first tune, and Louis turned around and said, "You can stay."
Huh. Yeah, I had a chance. I'd spent 2 weeks with Rich Madsen's improv class at North Texas State.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, incredible. And if you don't have his Tuba Consortium album, you're not a tuba player.
No, that's the Tuba Jazz Consort. You need to have that one. That needs to be in your collection. But
along with Dave Gannett's Tubas from Hell.
Yeah, definitely. But I remember when I was in Orlando the first time, and it was towards, because Rich had moved from North Texas State to North Florida. He was teaching out at Jacksonville. And I remember talking to him several times on the phone, and I didn't realize he was as sick as he was. And he ended up passing away. And I was kind of kicking myself because I was an hour and a half, you know, away from him. I could have been utilizing that time a little bit better to really get to connect with him a little bit better. But that's the way life is. But so anyway, after about 3 years in Bradenton, we ended up with 2 new kids, and Tyson Foods up here in Arkansas offered me a job, which was an hour and a half away from my wife's or my ex-wife's parents over in Branson. So I took that job. We moved back up here, and I've been here for 20 years.
Well, Tyson has a big plant. Out in Delano or in Central California somewhere too.
Oh yeah. We've got a couple of locations out there in Southern California and up in the Bay Area.
Right.
You know, San Lorenzo. We're not just chicken. We do all kinds of stuff.
I like that for a motto.
We're not just chicken anymore. But so like I said, I've been here for 20 years, and in that 20 years, I actually did put a group of musicians together that I had played throughout the years. Mike Vreeland was the piano player and banjo player. Uh, um, who else did we have? We had Charlie Lotus, who was one of the drummers for the Dukes in their later years, the original Dukes of Dixieland. Old Ed Stoddard on trombone, used a local guy here, Tony Childs, and I always thought he was younger than me, but he just retired last year, so he's like 66. So he's got like 10 years on me. And it was a tribute band that I sent out CDs to all the guys in the group, and we had a rehearsal the night before, and we played the 20th anniversary of the last time I played on the stand with my grandfather, Papa Jack, at the New Orleans Jazz Club. And, you know, it was one of those things that was totally out of my pocket, just to get a bunch of guys that I like from all around the country together to play some Dukes music. And that was in 2005, I think it was.
Now, I see you've done a lot of recording with Aunt Stewart.
Yeah, well, we didn't record. We were the B band when I was living in Chicago. A banjo player by the name of Don Sternberg and a trumpet player by the name of Rick Bendel, who was a big old Dutch guy. His name was Rick Van Tellegen, but his stage name was Rick Bendel. And a clarinet player that I heard Thomas refer to, Charlie Hooks from Chicago. We would go and we would do all of the gigs around Chicago that the stage band didn't want to do, I guess, but really busy.
Yeah.
And you know, the funny thing, I joke about my time in Chicago. My time in Chicago, I was a computer programmer for a software company, a market research firm, and I made more money playing jazz gigs than my day gig.
You know, it's an interesting thread as I do these interviews of a high tech and Dixieland.
Well, music is based on mathematics. If you think about it, you know, a bar has so many beats, and how many notes can I jam into that bar?
Yeah, a good example is that's Les Deutsch.
Oh, Les Deutsch. Yeah, Les was one of the original piano players with my parents' band, the New Bull Moose Party Band. And that's where I first met Les. And Les actually, at the age of 13, him and his father were designing synthesizers for the Akai company.
Well, the man's a genius.
Oh,
I mean that literally, obviously.
Oh, yeah, he is a rocket scientist.
Yeah, I've been playing some gigs with him lately, and you know his son now has a very famous big band going.
You're kidding.
Elliot Deutsch Big Band.
Oh, okay. Well,
And
that is incredible.
And they're hot stuff.
I remember one of my last trips out to LA, because when I was living out there, Les's kids were 3 and 5 or something like that. And I remember having to go up and read them bedtime stories, you know, because our families were really close, Les's family and my family. And, you know, I need to make it back out there. And
Les is signed up to do one of these too, by the way.
Oh, good. I'm going to look forward to seeing that.
Now, he was still playing. Now, when I got on the Frogs, he was their piano player.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how he and I sort of met originally. But that man plays, and he plays every instrument well.
Yeah. I remember taking my my ex-wife and our kids up to his studio above his garage. And basically he has every instrument set up there so he can do recording sessions. And my kids just went wild, you know, playing every instrument. They were like, you know, on the drum set and, you know, on the organ. And he's got that massive organ in his living room. I imagine he still has that.
I haven't been over there, actually. But yeah, he's a great guy.
Actually, the reason I ended up in Chicago was
To get away from Les.
No. Les, actually, because I was working for a software company in San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
And Les was friends with the owner of this market research company in Chicago. And he recommended me because Les was doing contract work for him, but this guy needed more of a full-time employee. So that's Les recommended me. The guy hired me, relocated me to Chicago, and basically, got me out of Southern California to free up the tuba market.
Well, I appreciate that. That was one of the things that helped launch my career was you moving.
Oh, no, I think I was one of my last trips out there was maybe 5-7 years ago. And, I took my kids and my girlfriend out there, and we stayed. My father was around the LA area, but then when he retired, he moved down to San Diego. So we were spending most of our time down there in La Jolla. But we drove up to LA, and I was like, oh, wow, this place has really changed. I didn't recognize it at all. And I drove by my childhood house in Westchester, which is right above Culver City, and it just looked like the houses were built right on top of each other. I'm like, wait a second. I don't remember this being this claustrophobic when I was growing up here.
Yeah, my dad actually was the superintendent of maintenance at Loyola Marymount.
Oh, wow.
So right in the flight path, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about living where we lived there in Westchester was if I couldn't get a ride from the airport, I could always walk home from the airport.
Yeah. It's actually, Westchester proper is actually a very pretty Midwestern seeming neighborhood,
Yeah. I think.
Next to Randy's Donuts.
Randy's Donuts. I'm trying to remember the Loyola Theater that they turned into an office building, but they kept the marquee up, and it's like, whoa, I don't get that. But and then the Great Wall of Westchester, which back in the 60s and 70s, you could actually see the houses, but they built these sound barriers going down Manchester that it's basically, boom, your tunnel vision, you're going like this, So,
yeah, the used plant right there off the hill.
Oh yeah, that was back when they built that, and that was the aerospace company I used to work for.
Oh, okay.
We call it Huge Air Crash, but I worked in the electro-optics and data systems group, so we did all that Star Wars thing back in the late 70s and early 80s. But that office building that was built into the hill time was the most expensive office building ever built in the United States. I mean, even the World Trade Centers and everything, that little 4-story building was the most expensive.
Okay.
Just because of the materials they ended up using in it. And I don't even know who's in there anymore, because DirecTV ended up buying most of Hughes Aircraft for the satellites and for the data systems and that kind of stuff. So that building was like a corporate headquarters at the time I worked for the company. But music has taken, it's been weird because, like we had mentioned before, if you're providing for your family, you really don't want to depend on a musical gig to do that, because of the way the musical environment is. So you take up your full-time job and you play at night to fulfill the need to perform. I think we all need to actually get out there and perform.
Yeah. Or you do what I did, which is I married a nurse.
I heard that. I'm at the point right now in my career. I'm 58 and I can retire at 59 and a half and start drawing my pension. And I'm really thinking of, I've got a couple of ideas that I'm really toying with of bringing back, and you growing up in LA like I did, you remember every weekend there were 2 to 3 jazz clubs?
Well, there's still one a week, if around enough. So, like the Valley
Oh,
Jazz Club is still there, and
uh-huh. But,
Society for the Preservation of Dixieland Jazz is still there, and a few of
uh-huh.
those are still around.
But in my day, I remember there was the Southern California Hot Jazz Society. And
Right.
They met downtown Los Angeles at a place called Larchmont Hall. And I remember this was before this was probably when I was 12, 13 years old. Um, my dad and mom and I and my brothers and sisters would drive over to South Central, and we would pick up Montucci Garland, and because he was at that time close to 100 years old, and we would take him to the jazz club, and I would watch him and bring him up to the stage and set him up with his bass, and he'd get up there, and one Sunday he got up there and played with UB Blake was up on the stage. I'm like, at those jazz clubs, you never knew who was going to show up. But over the years of seeing that environment and me being 13, and then all of a sudden I got up to about 15, I said, hey, I want to start playing. So that's luckily, Bill Jackson got me turned on to playing tuba, and I thank him for that.
Are you thinking about coming back out to the West Coast?
I don't know. I've been toying with New Orleans. I kind of.
Well, down there you've got to compete with Matt Perrine, so.
Yeah, I saw his interview, but several years back, me and my cousin Dino, who was Frank's second eldest son, we were talking about bringing up because right now Dino's running the New Orleans Jazz Club.
Okay.
And they're meeting at a bar called Mo Chalet, which kind of excludes the younger crowd to come in and listen and take over. We were talking about, hey, if we got some time, why don't we push this at either going out to the schools and promoting, or they've got these dining hall facilities, banquet facilities
Sure.
all over the city. And I'm sure that, if we pitched it right to the owners, we could probably get some space on a Sunday afternoon and maybe bring up a young crowd, a new Dixieland club that's geared to teaching the young folks. Because trust me, if we don't promote it and get the young folks to do like what we did when we were young, this is the only true American art form.
Yeah. We have to talk to Shakey's about having bands again, too.
Are there even Shakey's anymore?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that one right next to Disneyland Anaheim is still there. And
okay.
So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was, a lot of banjo players and piano players got their start at Shakey's. A good old Northern California trombone player, Bert Wilson, was friends with Shakey.
Yeah,
So,
I actually, that's I just right before you, I interviewed Lee Floyd.
Lee Floyd,
and he
Pink
started
Floyd.
at Shakey's also.
Yeah, no, and that was one of the guys I played a lot with in Florida. We, the funny thing is when you're in, say, a Florida, you end up learning every book in town. Okay, there was a Black Dogs book. There was the Rosie O'Grady's book. So basically, you would end up on a set with a bunch of different guys, and boom, you sounded like Rosie O'Grady's, or you sounded like the Black Dogs. I got a call once when I was living in Chicago to go to the Sacramento Festival and be the Black Dogs.
Oh, to be Dave Gannett, huh?
Yeah. So the band had broke up, basically. And we called ourselves the Uncle Yokeless Black Dogs. Because they got some trombone player out of New Orleans. I forget his name. He was a young, younger, in his 50s at that time, old street musician guy. And it was funny because I'd be in the back line. I think we had Mark Allen Jones on piano. We had Matt somebody on drums that came up from Southern California.
Matt Johnson,
yeah. And I'm playing tuba, and we're getting into the groove and everything. And I turn around and there's a chair behind me and the trombone player's sitting on it. I'm like, dude, what are you doing back there? Get up there. He goes, I got to rest.
oh yeah. No, the Black Dogs were basically a rock and roll band.
Oh yeah,
playing trad.
They were phenomenal, and it was a pretty simple formula because I had played with Yoke on Main Street at Disney, Disney World, and basically you get that that swamp beat going. You turn the rhythms so that you can get some of those Cajun influence.
Right, it's almost a funk line.
Yeah. And so many times, because playing up here with, the trad bands that I've been playing with, they are so used to, a straight 4-beat or a straight 2-beat. And then you start turning it up on them and they're like, whoa, where'd that come? That sounds pretty cool. You should keep that.
Is there much of a trad scene around where you are now?
There was, but because of what's been happening, I used to do mainly like farmers markets and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Farmers markets aren't happening anymore. The last summer was a good summer. I would say I was doing 3-4 gigs a week. And, but this summer's not so much. I've been practicing a lot.
Yeah, I think that's one thing about all of us have been putting in the hours there.
Yeah, back around 2009, I went through a divorce basically and had to raise my kids. And about 2018, I'd say, I started getting the itch again. So I pulled out the horn. I started doing my total range method book and building the chops back, and people started taking notice. And I've been playing with about 3 or 4 different groups up here. So,
well,
nothing on the national circuit.
I know I can't play like I used to, another 5 or 10 years back, but I'm still kicking it on. I've got a steady Friday hangout, so that kind of works.
If you get a chance, go get an ebook called Total Range by Charles Peters. It was written like 1972 or 1973, and it's basically an exercise thing that's 16 weeks long, and it'll build up your endurance and give you.
Just remember, I'm another 6 years older than you are, so.
Hey man, I'm planning on doing this in 6 years. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird because, like you had mentioned when we were talking earlier, there's not a lot about me out there. But when I did play, I played with some names.
Oh, absolutely.
And one of my favorites were the Hot Frogs. We were in Sparks, Nevada, doing that Reno Jazz Festival, and it was over the 4th of July weekend. And I had just the night before, because I was living in Orlando, they flew me out there to do it, and I had filmed a TV spot out there in Orlando with the Pleasure Island Philharmonic, and we were on a break at the Jazz Festival, and I turned to the guys in the band. I said, "Hey, come up to my room. I got to show you something." So we went up to the room, and I turned on the Disney 4th of July special, and they go, "Live from Walt Disney World in Orlando. It's the 4th of July special." Boom, and there we are playing. And the guys in the band look at me and they go, "Wait, you just said they're live." I go, "Yeah, it's Disney magic." but that type of, I kind of miss that kind of stuff in my life. But
well, first thing you need to do is you need to put together a complete history of your guys you've played with and places you've played, and stick it on your Facebook or something. Because I research all of my interviews. I try to research them more than the people who really want me to. And some people are like Lee Floyd has pages and pages and pages of the stuff available that I could use against him. I mean, for the interview. And not so much for y'all.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of weird because of what I do for a living. If I had a big Facebook presence, I might not be taken seriously at my day job.
I understand.
So there again, that lines up to what I want to do in the next 2 to 3 years, and maybe bring up,
But you've done so much with so many big names, and from the people I do know that have played with you, highly respected. That's not what I think. No, I'm kidding. But I think the world needs to know about that. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this show, is to give people a face and a voice to the rest of the world.
And I really appreciate what you're doing. This is a major undertaking. I was very impressed with everything, all the moving parts that you have to make this work.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations, and I hope
a lot of kudos goes to my son for that.
You've got an IT son too, huh?
Yes.
My IT son is doing video games, so unfortunately.
So is mine, actually.
Is he writing or playing?
No, he's playing right now.
That and Pokemon. That keeps my son busy, and it's like, maybe.
Well, listen, Mike, I need to start wrapping this up.
Okay.
Just not that I wouldn't want to go on forever, but unfortunately, we're booked pretty tight today.
Oh, well, understandable, man.
And what a pleasure it is to finally get to sit down and speak with you and get to know better who you are, rather than just innuendo from acquaintances.
From third parties.
There you go. And like I said, the only reason, there are a couple tuba players I know really well, but it's because I met them when I wasn't a tuba player. Or, for example, Westy Westenhofer played trombone in one of the bands I was in. And so we got to know each other real well. I went to college with Charlie Warren. He was playing tuba and I was playing trumpet. But guys like you and I who compete and trade for the work when we're in the same area, we don't ever get a chance to know each other.
Yeah. And like growing up, I would, and when I was learning, I would hang at the jazz festivals with Dave Gannett, just to pick up, some technique and I remember once we were actually on the same stage and I pulled out my horn and I stood way back behind Dave.
Yeah. The reason I know Dave is interesting because, of course, I was a fanboy like everybody else of that band when I was with Misbehavin'. And he came off stage once. I introduced myself. We got to talking. And about 2 days later, after I got home, he called me up and he did a 3-page article on me for the West Coast Rag.
Wow.
With an over-the-phone interview. So I must have said something right. But we've kind of been Facebook friends ever since.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Dave, I remember right after I'd done that, Dave took off and went to Tibet to study with a monk for several years. And so he went his way, and I went back down to Southern California and was doing a full-time job at Hughes Aircraft. And I remember I got a phone call from old Stan Freeze. And
he's still around.
He's still around. And he goes, "Is this Mike Marois?" I go, "Yeah." And he called me at my day gig. He goes, "Well, we just lost a tuba player." And this was when Gino Paulson had passed away down at the park in Orlando. He ran back to get his mouthpiece, and he was running for the bus and took a step to get on the bus, had a heart attack, and he was gone before he hit the ground. But he goes, yeah, we want you to come out to the park and audition for Gino's spot. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I did that, and we were doing that, and all of a sudden Dave shows back up at the park down there. And I'm like, oh.
He's amazing.
He is. And now he's on another one of his sabbaticals. He's
Yes.
up in Iowa.
In fact, he sold his
Iowa.
horns.
He did?
I understand that, especially the one that was rigged with the fireworks that he sold.
Oh, yeah. He tried to sell me a 2J that was rigged with fireworks. And I said, what the heck's this hole doing in it? He goes, well, that's where the lead goes to the mortar. And I go, you're the only guy that has a 2J with a dent outwards. That mortar was held in the bell by Velcro. And if he overpacked the mortar and he lit it off, it would actually shoot back into the horn and hit the bottom bow.
Oh, man. He's a character.
He is. And as a matter of fact, I went, I drove by where he was at, and I kicking myself a couple weeks back. I should have stopped in and said hi to him because I was up in Iowa selling one of my horns to a guy up there. And it was, but yeah, Dave is a very interesting character. Very, very, very deep.
Oh, to say the least.
But yeah, man, I've enjoyed this. I really, I'm digging what you're doing and getting everybody's story out there. And
well, if you have any influence, I'm still trying to get Dave to agree to come on. I haven't. I've sent him some emails and some things, but
I'll drop him. I'll drop him a note or call him.
There you go. All right. Well, listen. Thanks again. Maybe we can do this again after a while, or maybe I'll see you on the West Coast if New Orleans doesn't work out.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Or just a vacation, perhaps.
Nah, I don't know. It'd be about a 5-year vacation.
All right, sir. It's been good to see you and talk to you.
Man, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. Thank you.
All right. You take care.
Bye.
Thank you all for watching Trad Jazz Today with Dan Zeilinger. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Videos come out every Wednesday and Friday.